Hello, everyone, all you heroes in training. Welcome back to another episode of My Hero Therapy. I am one of your two hosts, Benjamin Tights, psychology doctoral candidate, but I am known as the empathic hero, Pathos. And I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Dr. Nicole Hassler, clinical psychologist out of Buffalo, New York. But for the purposes of this podcast, I am known as the intuitive hero, Psyche. Keep in mind, this podcast is for educational purposes only. While we are both therapists, we are not your therapists, unless we are your therapists.
And we have a very special guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself and, of course, give us his hero name.
Oh, right. That's the gag for this podcast. One sec. Let me recheck my notes. I'm thrilled to be on. I'm thrilled to be on because as a lifelong anime fan, we kind of always know that by episode 5, the show has either revealed itself or you can gauge how good a shonen's going to be by, is this a tournament arc starting or not? This is exciting. My Hero Academia takes a while to warm up and really show you the dynamics of the world and some great ups and downs of the characters. And what did you ask to introduce myself? Hi, everyone. My name is Karl Custer. I'm a licensed master social worker coming from New York City, but for over 12 years in the Northeast and all over America. My stage name was Uncle Yo. I was a geek and anime-specific stand-up comedian. I was an MC, panel presenter, masquerade host, a podcaster, and all the like, everywhere from Denver to D.C., from Albany to Albuquerque. And for the purposes of this show, I'm going to go with an X-Men reference. I get to be the MC too loud to cower hero, the future Mike of presents pasts.
Nice.
It's a
now it's an
mouthful.
X-Men reference.
Both X-Men and My Hero Academia in one. I think that's pretty cool. I like both of those.
It's pretty fitting.
I mean, they're both about schools for people with powers. So, yeah. Well, so today we are talking about episode 5 of the anime titled What I Can Do for Now. This episode, as Carl had said, episode 5 of most series is when you know that things are happening. This is where things really start. And I feel like this is really true for this episode because this is when Deku, our beloved hero, Broccoli Boy, Izuku Midoriya, he now is starting to kind of try to figure out how can he be the hero that he's always dreamed of being now that he has powers and he's gained admission to the prestigious UA high school. We are introduced to the teacher of his class, Shota Aizawa, also known as Dad Zawa in a lot of fan groups, for obvious reasons.
Also known as Eraserhead.
Eraserhead is his hero name. I call him Dad Zawa. But
it's Dad Zawa.
However, I'll let you know that both of those are great names. Both Dad Zawa and Eraserhead are both great names for unreleased Radiohead albums. So let's credit where credit is due.
Yeah. So we start off this episode with a bunch of physical tests. And Aizawa is telling the students this is, to set up a baseline to kind of figure out where they're going to go in their hero journey. But he also tells them that the student that gets last place is going to get expelled.
No pressure.
Yep, he pulls a Kakashi in this case. This is the unspoken test. The written exam is completely thrown out. This is a real test of your skills. This is such a great episode because it introduces a bunch of the beloved side characters without needing to go into too much detail. So we don't get all of the group dynamics, but we do enter the binary of the show. And you can tell basically whether or not an episode of My Hero Academia is going to be good by this point onward, because it's answered by a simple yes or no question. Does this episode have Froppy in it? If yes, it is a good episode of My Hero Academia. And this also goes across most other anime right now. We're running through Golden Kamuy and a little bit of Frien, zero Froppy by default.
That's a fair point. Well, and so here, this episode is picking up after the tests are all done. Izuku is saying, that he was starting from last place, and he had to really push through because the one time he was able to use his quirk without breaking his entire arm, he threw the baseball. What did I write here? 700 meters. I don't know the metric system, but I'm guessing that's far.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
It is far. It's a meter times 700.
Yeah. One thing I actually really like about this episode is we're seeing all these people's reactions to this guy that everyone thought was just this nerdy kid. And wow, he does this amazing thing. Everyone's in awe of him. They're cheering him, except for Bakugo,
who once again confronts Deku. He's telling him, he's threatening him. And as he does, right, in his typical bully form. But the difference is this time Deku actually stands up to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that in a flashback, that critical moment, that first initial change. And I want to share a quote that a friend of mine tells his toddler is everybody who was brave was scared.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a wonderful scene that you bring up because as usual, I mean you've got Deku pressed up against a wall by Bakugo, and even though he's laying it down, someone told me I can be a hero. He is defying Bakugo, tears down his face. Just because he's brave doesn't mean he's not scared.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean for Bakugo, Bakugo is someone that has basically grown up his entire life, is told that he's the best. He's very arrogant and maybe overly angry. He's an angry Pomeranian.
Prime candidate for beta blockers right there.
Definitely.
One of the reasons
100%.
we have the Reddit sub chat, am I the asshole? If you have to ask.
Yes.
If you have to ask a bunch of strangers.
Absolutely. But Bakugo is, his anger is not that Deku is doing stuff. But he feels that Deku had tricked him because, Bakugo has known Deku their whole life. They were childhood friends before their quirks developed, or before Bakugo's quirk developed. Bakugo is honestly really shocked. All his other students and the teachers, they think that, this is just Deku's quirk that he's had since age 4 or 5. And holy shit, it's a really crazy, powerful quirk. How did he survive this long? Bakugo, grew up with Deku, and Deku never had a quirk. And so I just found it really interesting that what Bakugo was mad at was not that Deku did so well and, all this stuff, but he basically was like, how dare you trick me? How dare you talk back to me?
Isn't that so telling about how fragile Bakugo's ego is? Because if this were the case, Deku would have been lying to his mother, his family, all of his students. But Bakugo takes this one surprise as this is clearly against me personally.
Yeah.
And that is a red flag if ever there was one. Which, again, you got to give them a little bit of credit because these are all teenagers. These are all young people, and they're still figuring out where their egos and abilities rest in the world.
And when you think about it, this is probably the first time in his entire life that Bakugo has felt like maybe he's not the best. Maybe there is somebody out there that is better than he is, and this person has been hiding it from him. This kid that he used to bully, and so there's that little bit of inferiority kind of, scratching at his brain a little bit.
I just realized I was going through my notes and I was looking at the notes of the next episode, so I might have spoiled stuff.
It's nothing that wasn't already in this episode.
Yeah, okay, good. But here, Aizawa is saying, the reason why he, is going to expel people who don't do well is basically hey, you're going to be up against villains. And if you can't control your power now without incapacitating yourself and always needing rescue, then you're going to put other people in danger.
Right, that's what he says directly to Deku.
Yeah.
If you cannot be reliable, if you cannot control yourself, you don't have a place in the team, you don't have a place in something large. That is very military. That's also a little bit more societal minded and group minded rather than individual minded.
Absolutely, yeah. It is definitely, it makes sense for that culture that this is coming from, which is a very collectivistic culture. I think we do see that also in American culture to an extent. You have to always be the best, because if not, then,
like no one ever was.
Yeah, he has to catch Mewtwo, basically.
But you realize the Mewtwo was in me all along.
Here we go. I think another thing here that I really loved was Ochako.
Yeah, she finally gets some screen time.
She does not know him. She's only met him at the exam, the entrance exam, and she's praising him. She's saying, "Oh my God, you did so good."
And not just her, Ida too.
Mm-hmm.
Ida actually apologized to him for like misjudging him at the exam. Deku is like freaking out. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, these people are acknowledging me.
Absolutely. And that praise is basically, it's great that it happens as he's literally standing in the threshold of his homeroom. So he hasn't even put a foot in the door, and he's already been praised, initiated, and recognized in a moment of humility. And it always makes me think back to the critical scenes of Into the Spider-Verse. Mm-hmm. Every time Miles Morales encounters another Spider-Man, both their spider senses go off, and every other character reflects to Miles, "You're like me." And I get chills in spider sense every time that happens, because it is so validating to hear directly. We try to cover it up by trying to act cool, but that Deku is hours into having his quirk, and he's already standing in UA, the prestigious school, which, granted, there is a little bit of like Nepo baby transfer, because the world's greatest hero has literally given him his hair and power. But this is also something that he earned. And I think that's why it's so important that this episode begins with that wonderful flashback on the beach, and you see All Might's skinny hand is opened, and it's I had to look this up. I think it's a waning gibbous moon. People into tarot, horoscope, or otherwise shallow people, correct us in the YouTube comments below. But the moon is already going to darkness, and it's a great foreshadowing of what's going to happen, both for All Might's power, for his stance in society, but also the series at large. So he's meeting Deku in secret on the beach that Deku has with his own hands cleaned up and cleared. So in a way, he's already praised himself, despite I kind of wanted to take an inch and run a mile with this, but Deku being now physically the fittest he's ever been, and a totally physically able human being, in a world of the extraordinary, him being ordinary almost makes him someone with a chronic illness, or maybe that's a stretch too far. But being the top physically is still not enough in this world of exceptional people. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so critical for someone who starts so low to build up so high, as we'll get to in the months and months as we go over this podcast.
Well, I think it's actually interesting that you brought up like the disability, because I guess in this world where everybody has a superpower, to be without a power would be considered a disability. And he's trying to, just get to the same level as everyone else, whereas everyone else has had their quirks since age 4. He has to work that much harder. He has to, his exercise routine, he was doing so much more than most people would do in a normal exercise routine in a shorter amount of time, because he had to.
And as somebody with a chronic illness, I can say, like, even that in and of itself can be considered a superpower. Like, I can tell you that it's going to rain before it's going to rain, because my head will be pounding. Even though he may not have had a quirk, like, that's still like that drive that he had. And again, the fact that he pays such close attention to the other heroes and their quirks and their weaknesses and all that kind of stuff, like that, therein lies a superpower right then and there. And I think we've talked about that before. Like, he's got these ADHD traits, which is a superpower in and of itself.
Yeah, he's the student who recognizes who Aizawa is.
Yeah, he was the one who knew it. Like, nobody else knew who Aizawa was, because Aizawa is actually one of those few heroes in this society that doesn't go for the spotlight, doesn't go for publicity. He's in it to actually do the job, which is he's definitely the Batman of this show.
He's Batman.
It's really actually telling that is the person who's teaching these students. Yes, we will see later on that they will actually have classes on how to deal with like the paparazzi and publicity, but to have one of the few heroes that isn't publicity minded, who isn't just in it for this fame and celebrity, teaching these students how to be a hero, I think is actually really great. Then they're really learning what they need to learn to do the job and not just get the attention.
Yeah, I mean, Aizawa has a couple of great traits that I love in trainers. Not quite as like feckless as Kakashi, but he is a bit guarded, a bit standoffish. If you want to bring in Jungian, there's a little bit of like the wicked stepmother or the like reluctant mentor. This is already someone who's jaded. He's taking kids this is our first day at UA, and we've all got the school uniform. And here he is saying Japan is full of not unevenness, unfairness. That is such a cynical but real look at the world. And I wanted to pose it to you two, since you're a bit more into the field than I am. Do we have a name for kind of reluctant or cynical role models within family systems, within like older brothers or parents? Because Deku at this point has only been given the kind of unmitigated and unstopping like motherly love from both his mother and All Might. It's so critical that in that quick flashback, Deku's mom says, "You're really cool." He's been told that by his idol. He's been told that by his mother. He gets his foot in the door with praise, and Aizawa stands up and says, "One of you is getting kicked out today. And it's probably you, because you don't know what you're doing."
I actually don't know if there's a term for it, and I feel this is one of those things where I don't know enough about family systems to be able to speak on it, and I don't want to give our listeners any false information, but it's definitely something to look into.
Absolutely. I'm also not well-versed in family systems theory, so if any of our listeners, who are also therapists or nerdy psychology geeks are well-versed in family systems theory, please let us know if there is an actual term for this. But I think it is actually really telling that while, yes, now his mom is calling him really cool, up until this point, his mom had, yes, she always loved him. She always gave him that support. But it was also, really important for us to keep in mind that when he was younger, she was basically the first person to tell him, no, you can't. And so to go from that, and she mentioned it, I think, in this episode, she's sorry for what she said back then. He kept pursuing his dream, even though she didn't support him. I don't know about you, but I've not come across many parents that will admit fault about raising their children.
We might be the first generation that actually pulls that off as millennials. We might actually be the first.
Yeah, definitely.
We might.
So it's really actually very important for Deku's development here is, wow, this person that I love dearly and that I still want to make proud of me acknowledged that she made a mistake and is now offering me that support that I craved.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a big deal for him. And we saw him. He started crying. His water quirk, His
water quirk, the crying quirk.
And we can't make the argument, we cannot make the argument that Deku has had really any negligence growing up, but when we talk with people in a trauma setting, it is so important to hammer down the new truth of it is not your fault. Bad things happen not because you are unworthy or bad things just happen. I only get to talk about this because like a few days ago, I went to this wonderful lecture in Manhattan about core self-reclamation therapy, a kind of new, very aggressively loving based off of parts therapy. And it was so critical. It even had a scene, I think the lecture started with the scene from Good Will Hunting with just Robin Williams repeating, "It's not your fault," and that's the thing that breaks Matt Damon. I mean, but speaking of school students, let's get things better and lighter, because it's field day at UA, and I kind of wanted to bring up the point of the tests that Aizawa brings up. In our last episode, Deku passes not because he scores enough points, but because there was an unspoken je ne sais quoi quality of heroes, and that's the self-sacrifice. That is literally doing the right thing for the right reasons. Yeah, it's not just the fireballs, but you've got to have what it takes to step up when someone else falls down. And so Aizawa introduces everyone into this field day with these kind of standardized tests, and I got flashbacks and almost vomiting muscle memory to the mile run that we were subjected to, the national health. I want to say it was a President Clinton installation.
The president's fitness test or something like that.
The presidential fitness test. Yes, there was national level and just pain.
I want to know which president started that, because they need to be taken off history books, you know.
Yeah, we need to have a chat.
It was Clinton, so you might get your wish, Ben. I don't know what to tell you, but he's not. Sweat around the collar. Now, these standardized fitness tests are really both a case to show off the students' quirks, and for us as viewers to introduce everyone about what they can do. We're introduced to Mr. Naval Ray. We're introduced that Ida is like the Flash equivalent, in addition to being a rules junkie. This is a chance for the students to show off not just their abilities, but also to show something that every teacher talks about, but it's so hard to describe and teach, is creative problem solving, and really a chance for them to show off and use their quirks. And what's dangerous about these are all physical tests. And I was thinking about that in rewatching this episode. These are all like the long jump, which if you can fly, you're going to win. These are how far can you throw the ball. So if you have super strength, or if you can like Gravity Girl, you're going to win just that test. But people's worth is so not based on that. What do you do with a kid who has mental powers or social powers? I mean, never forget, Professor X is in a wheelchair. He's also one of the world's most powerful mutants. You can truly be both. So it made me think of like the false narrative that standardized testing is how you can rank people, and that there's also qualifying data in addition to qualifying in addition to quantitative data. You can do this many push-ups. You're also this resilient during midterms and during finals.
Well, and we see this later on, and I don't want to give out spoilers, but when we get to the, I forget what it's called, but it's the big tournament that they have coming up, the sports festival, we see that with Shinso, who has a mental quirk. And so he doesn't get into the hero course because his quirk it's not physical by any stretch of the imagination, but yet it's extremely powerful to the point where people think like he could have been a villain.
Yeah. Well, and Shinso's not the only one whose quirks are not very obviously physically gifted. Like even in class 1A, we have Hagakure, who's basically just invisible. Made me really wonder, like, how did she get past the giant robot monsters? Like, she obviously avoided them, but how did she, like, destroy them? How did she, like, get those points? We don't know that. We have...
Yeah, she really just fades into the background of most episodes.
Yeah, she's hiding in plain sight. But then we also have Mineta, who, while not everyone's favorite character, he's also not a combat-based power. Like, so it's really interesting that Shinso was like rejected from the hero course when you have other people that also could not defeat giant robot monsters who are in the hero course. So this test, also this standardized test, is not really able to test everybody equally, which is, the theory behind standardized testing, because not everyone is starting from the same level. I mean, which is, as in real life, you have students that are more physically gifted than others. So obviously they're going to do better on those physically based tests. That was not good grammar, but, whatever. I'm not in grammar class anymore, so.
We got what you were saying.
Take that, grammar school.
You passed your standardized test.
Yeah, seriously. Maybe there are other tests that Isa was giving them that we just don't know about.
He pulls out a colorblind exam.
I'd like to think that he does. But he's telling them the purpose of this quirk assessment, of this test, is to know your own maximum first. So that way you know where to go from there. But it is still really kind of hard for students that, like Deku, who had only just got his quirk like the day before, 2 days before, a month, whatever. Like, he has had no time to get used to his quirk. I don't know if he's tried using his quirk between the entrance exam and starting school. I kind of doubt it. Otherwise, we probably see a lot of craters and
No, because he would have blown out a rib or something. He would have hurt himself.
Yeah, I think the first time he uses it is with the giant robots. It's his first time using it. And even during these standardized tests that are being given, he says, I can only use my quirk once because it's going to knock me out. And that's where we get the egg in the microwave metaphor.
Yeah, he's a living glass cannon. All right, fine. Then maybe I'm the only one on the call who's played tabletop role-playing games. I get it. I'll get different memes. I'll get some JoJo memes. We'll get it. I feel seen, unlike our invisible classmate, but I mean, that's why it's so critical. This is such an aptly titled episode. This is what I can do for now. And so this is so critical when we talk about setting goals as therapists with clients and setting up expectations for goals that we haven't even achieved yet. I think this is the biggest note that I wrote on the spoiler. This is our second time recording, mainly because of my technological foibles. But with the title of this episode aptly being called "This is what I can do for now," this is showing that Deku, as well as the rest of his class, has to be creative within his limitations. Some of us can only fire off our laser beam for a second at a time. Some of us get nauseous when we use our quirk for too long. Some of us just are Bakugo and have to exist in a world with other people, and that in itself is a disadvantage. But for Deku to make all for one work for one for all, very different quirk, one for all work for him, he even has to make his own metaphor. It's not the glass cracking and shattering the way All Might describes. He uses the egg in the microwave metaphor, but that's the thing that works for him. And that's why with social workers, we develop. I mean, this is being released in February, so the good chance is maybe 50 to 75% of you have already forgotten the New Year's resolution because it was kept too vague. There wasn't anything practical done about that, and that's why we talk about SMART goals. SMRT. I mean, SMART is SMART being specific. I want to lose the following weight, or I want to increase what I'm able to bench press. Measurable. I want this to be a quantifiable goal that I can show progress in. Achievable. This is something I can do within a good amount of time. You can't increase your bench press by 100 pounds in a month. That takes time and rest and incremental increases. Relevant for R. These are the things I'll do for this specific goal. If your goal is get a better night's sleep, an hour before, get away from screens, get away from your phone. If you need that 5 minutes or 15-minute mindfulness video on YouTube, audio only. Get yourself accustomed to the dark. Change up the pillow if need be. That's a relevant goal for if that goal is sleep. And then T is time-based, which I don't think Deku has a lot of. But time-based is so helpful, especially when you're doing short-term sessions with a social worker, therapist, psychologist. If you've only got so much time before, most likely insurance kicks you off, or there's another tournament arc, or there's another League of Villains arc. or All Might has to have another 2-episode long flashback. You've only got so much time, and you have to be reasonable with these goals, which is why we talk so much about burnout in the last 2 episodes of Deku clearing the beach and sculpting his body so quickly in such a short amount of time. That is dangerous. This is what I can do for now, is the question about scaling. And this will probably go back into, say, like exposure therapy or other modalities of, it doesn't have to be now. It's not a binary. It doesn't just go from, I want to go from depressive to manic. It is, I go from 0 to 10. I can exist comfortably in a 4, 5, or 6. Can I get 0 to 10 and exist comfortably in that 4, 5, or 6? Do I have to be afraid when I'm approaching 4 or 3? No, because 5 and 6 can come back again. Once again, not to apples and oranges, but that was taking qualifiable data into quantifiable. But we use scaling all the time when approaching phobias or gauging someone's trauma reflexes.
And I liked what you were saying about the goals and whatnot, and that reminded me of something I said on the first recording, to think about what our values are when making goals. So these infinite type of things that we're striving to achieve, whether that be physical health, self-care, whatever have you. And then thinking about the small goals that you can do to help achieve that value. The goals are finite. They, once they're done, and then you move on to the next step until, again, you're filling up your cup full of, whatever the value is. So if it is like physical health and looking to lose weight, okay, so I'm going to start with, maybe I'm going to exercise 20 minutes, this day, and then gradually working your way up.
Yeah. And I'll say, I've been able to lose 10 pounds in the 8 months I've been with this one job because I've practiced intermittent fasting, and I started with doing 1 minute and 20 planking in addition to 50 jumping jacks. I'm at 80 jumping jacks, and I'm at 2 minutes planking. I'm not mad that it took 8 months to get there. I'm actually impressed that I got here at all, considering I used to not be able to plank.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to add to this, Nicole, you were mentioning about the values. It's really important that you remember, why are we having these goals? Because let's face it, we will mess up. We will fumble. We will fall. And if we don't keep in mind our value and our motivation and why this is important to us, it's going to be harder to move past that failure. If someone, has the New Year's resolution, the goal to lose weight, but then, there's an office party and donuts galore. And then the next day they're like, well, fuck it. I clearly can't do this, so I might as well not even try. So it's really important that it's okay to fumble. It's okay to have setbacks. It's important to, if we're going to fumble forward. If we're going to have a setback, turn that into a set up.
Yes, I love that. And in substance abuse recovery, what we've adapted over the last 10 years in our language is relapse is part of recovery. It is not a switch you can flip. You have to get used to things. It's a long process to uncouple biologically your body's need and desire that you internalize for that. But you got to give yourself credit that you are at least trying.
To go back to the point that Ben was talking about, with if there's donuts at the party and whatnot, a lot of times what we'll see too is that people will punish themselves after the fact. So I had that one donut, now I have to work out extra hard tomorrow because to burn those calories from that donut.
You could definitely, if you wanted to, work extra hard that day of. You could also take a breath and try to do a little bit of cold turkey the day after. But again, what's going to help so much more importantly, and this is for Deku, this is the whole power arc of this whole shonen, which is all about starting at 1 and building yourself up to 10. This is the same as with every Naruto training arc, as everything shonen. It is about incrementally doing what you can do that day and giving yourself credit for showing up and putting the effort into that. This is what makes the shonen genre so timeless and so important, especially for our adolescents who are just watching it the first time. I always like to say that every anime can eventually be someone's either first or gateway. And I've loved My Hero Academia because it is Japan's love letter to the influx of the global phenomenon that has been Marvel movies and Marvel storytelling. It's the same story again and again, but it's gotten translated over into the Japanese mindset of something more communal, something that's based on a society working for and producing itself. Which is why I was hoping I could actually list a couple of other anime for folks that would be interested in following a similar genre. So
absolutely, go for it.
So My Hero Academia is very much like Japan's love letter to Western style superhero stories, and I don't think there would be My Hero Academia if there weren't Tiger and Bunny in the, I want to say, the late 2000s. So this is definitely a world in which the heroes are the celebrities. They are televised all the time on prime time. There are about 8 core heroes in this great big city that looks like a Sonic the Hedgehog level. But you meet Tiger, and Tiger's a superhero whose powers are waning. He's probably 8th out of 8, and this is a world in which the heroes are treated like NASCAR racers. The heroes' outfits are decorated with sponsors and stickers, and you're given more points on television for showing off and doing product sponsorship. You get more points for doing that than capturing the bad guy, or stopping the bank robber, or using your catchphrase more often. And so, Tiger, who's on his way out, is partnered against, dragging a tooth and claw with a new up-and-comer pretty boy named Bunny, who has his exact same power sense. This is an interesting show because it is, again, it's definitely an anime, but it is based on just the Western idea of individuality and fame in the superhero setting. There's also a cute, very low-stakes show, Samurai Flamenco. I want to say 2012, but I'm probably wrong. That is the story of a model who literally wants to be a superhero, and so he is going almost not Batman, but this will date me, but the Blankman model, where he is dead broke, putting on a biker suit, and trying to stop crime at night. Samurai Flamenco was just a really sweet, low-stakes anime that I really enjoyed, and it made me always think about the Western heroes, but hey, Japan found out about this as well. Because of course I can throw off One Punch Man, but One Punch Man deserves your views and is popular for a reason.
Yeah. One Punch Man is a very different type of hero show. Because, from what I've gathered from Saitama in One Punch Man is he's almost like he doesn't really want to be this kind of hero anymore because he's just so powerful that nothing really challenges him. And, to go bring it back to setting goals and, figuring out what can I do for now, which is the title of this episode, is, well, we don't want to just do things that are easy. We want to challenge ourselves. If it's something that we really care about, there has to be at least a little bit of struggle, because if we get complacent, then we're not going to reach our goals. We're not going to live in line with our values.
Yeah. I want to give that wisdom out to listeners. If you're in a position where you feel you could train someone to do your position, it's time to move on. You have acquired those skills. You are set. You can't be surprised. And it's time for your betterment to move on, move up, and internalize what you've learned.
Yeah. I think everyone should always be striving to learn new things. And we do see that a lot in this anime. Even the professional heroes, when they're faced with something that they couldn't deal with, or when they see these young heroes, these students striving and persevering, even they start to realize, oh, wow, there's still things that I can learn. So don't let anyone think that just because you're the all might of your field that you have nothing left to learn. Because one of these days, Deku's going to come along.
Unless you're Satoru Gojo.
Yes.
In which case, you know it all.
You're just the author insert, and like the show's only interesting after you leave. Yes.
I beg to differ, but
no,
okay.
Satoru Gojo is like, he's just like, you know what? I know that I'm the best, and I'm not even going to bother hiding it.
I don't even need to worry about skincare routine. There are no flaws. None.
There's no flaws. None.
Wow. I mean, so there's so much in this coming up in these next like even 5 episodes for viewers and for fans of the podcast. So I feel really bad about like anything that we're hinting at or we're going to foreshadow. But Deku is just literally on this cusp and threshold of not just fitting in with this new social group, but learning his limitations. And I think the most exciting thing about learning your limitation is learning that the next day you can go a little farther into it. You can push it just a little farther.
And we see that in this episode with the test. You know, Aizawa, he erases Deku's quirk before he throws that ball because he knows he's going to break his arm in order to throw it in order to achieve high marks. So Deku is able to concentrate all of his energy into one finger. Throw the ball. He still breaks that finger, but he learned in this moment how to control it just for this moment.
I can still move. And I love that about Eraserhead is that he brings everyone to Deku's level. He is accidentally the great equalizer in a very unfair, unjust, one might say, unequal society. And this is the homeroom teacher.
Which is all the more reason why he's the perfect teacher for this class. Because, you know, he's saying you shouldn't only rely on your quirk. And he forces them to, you know, develop other strengths and to really, you know, think about their own abilities in a different way. And we see that throughout the series. So that, I think, is going to be something we're going to come back to a lot is, you know, yes, I have this strength. I have this ability. Is the way I've been using it the only way that I can use it? Because even Deku here, you know, he was saying that he can go from 0 to 100, and that was it. But then, you know, Aizawa erased his quirk right at the right moment, and he had to think about the egg in the microwave. Okay, maybe, you know, I can think about my power in a different way, and I can open the microwave just before it starts beeping. You know, when it's just the right amount of cook.
Some of our listeners out there know what a burnt bag of microwave popcorn smells like. But you know what? Every time you learn how to work with the tools you have and the resources at your disposal, eventually you learn how to make that instant ramen without looking at the bag 5 or 6 times, and then a 7th, and then an 8th, because you can't find the extra spice packet. And don't you have like 8 spice packets in the junk drawer? You're never going to find it at this point. Oh no, it's already boiling over. Wait, weren't you supposed to put an egg in it? Oh no, do we have eggs? Why didn't you think to put the egg down ahead? Next time, put the egg out and then boil the water. We all learn at our own rates. This is the ramen I can't cook now.
That was your egg in the microwave. Got it.
Yes. Ramen.
But absolutely.
Ramen
and that is one of the big themes of not only this episode, but of the show is, you know, here's where we're at. Everyone will learn things differently. That doesn't make anybody better or less than the other.
100, and from there, go beyond plus ultra.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for letting me come on the podcast and talk about my hero. It was such a thrill. You guys have put out such a great 4 episodes already priming, and I can't wait to see where this goes in the future.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, and sorry we had to do it a second time, but hey, it was just as fun the second time around.
Practice makes better.
There we go. See, we had to learn at our own pace how to get this episode right. We had to learn from Deku. Mm-hmm. So to all our listeners, thank you for sticking with us. Again, I am Benjamin Tights. I'm a psychology doctoral candidate. I'll be graduating this year, so maybe in a couple episodes I'll change my title. I can also be found on the interwebs through my other podcast called Mental Health Quest, The Therapist Office and Beyond, where we talk about what is mental health, what does it look like, how do these diagnoses present themselves, what do the different treatments look like. So you can find that on the social medias at MHQ Podcast or wherever podcasts are found.
That's how that's how you and I became friends, because I reached out because of that show.
That is indeed how we became friends. Carl emailed that podcast, be like, "Hey, do you guys know anime?" And I was like, "Yes, let's be friends." And now we are friends.
Let's be friends.
So Nicole, where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram and on TikTok at Level Up Therapist, or on my website, nextleveluptherapy.com. Or, of course, you can contact me through our podcast here, the My Hero Therapy Podcast, at My Hero Therapy Podcast on pretty much all platforms.
Yes, and Carl, where can people find you on the interwebs?
We're working toward the new relaunch of the retool as Uncle Yo Nerd Comedian becomes Uncle Yo Nerd Therapist. So at the moment, the new Instagram feed is Uncle Yo Nerd Therapist. We're going to see where this goes in the future. I'm very excited to announce that next month in March, I'll be giving a new social work panel about poverty and repeat offense and the flaws in our criminal justice system. I'm calling it Batman versus Just Us, for richer or poorer.
Love it.
I'll
be giving that at ZenkaiCon the weekend of March 23rd through 25th in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and we have many coals in the fire for this year's Gen Con at the start of August in Indianapolis, in Indiana. I'm really thrilled for both. I used to do, and Ben knows this, I used to do anywhere from 15 to 20 weekend-long conventions in a year for about a decade. Like, that was my hustle, but it's so nice to come at it with a master's degree and real experience at this point. But you can find me on Instagram at Uncle Yo Nerd Therapist.
So we also like to thank our sponsor, All Mind Health, a professional psychological corporation here in California, seeing people in person in Orange County and telehealth throughout the state. It is run by my brother, Dr. Isaac Teitz, who I like to think of as the all mind of sleep therapy and nerd therapy. He is a great guy. I'm not biased at all.
Nepotism!
Well, we will be posting this episode on YouTube as well. So if you guys prefer to listen on YouTube, it is My Hero Therapy on YouTube, right?
Yes, it is My Hero Therapy Podcast.
Yep. It was a pleasure, everyone. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to our audio editor. I'm just thanking everybody last minute. I'm sorry. Our audio editor, Kyle Rebar, who helps us so much with the tech
We love
side.
you, Kyle.
Oh, my gosh. He is the real hero here. And you can find him on Instagram at Kyle Rebarf. And our graphic designer who designed our amazing logo is Ali Ford on Instagram at Wicked Encounters.
But that concludes this episode. So, dear listeners, remember to go beyond.
Plus Ultra.
Ultra? Dang it, I forgot.